Okinawa, spring 1945. The world is a cave. It is a damp limestone wound in the earth, one of hundreds honeycombing the island. The air inside is a foul cocktail of iron-rich mud, unwashed bodies, gangrene, and fear. Sputtering carbide lamps cast long, dancing shadows, making the living look like ghosts. This is the world of Akiko Tanaka. She is 19 years old. Months ago, she was a student learning literature. Now she is a nurse in the Himiyuri Student Corps, a unit of teenage girls thrust into the meat grinder of the war. If you believe these forgotten stories need to be told, subscribe to our channel now and let us know where you are watching from in the comments below. Akiko's reality is defined by what she lacks. She lacks medicine, she lacks bandages, she lacks clean water. Most of all, she lacks hope. Outside this suffocating darkness, a storm is raging. The Americans call it the Battle of Okinawa. The Japanese soldiers call it the Typhoon of Steel. Akiko has been taught exactly what to expect when that storm finally breaks through. The Americans are not men, they are oni, demons. Blue-eyed, hairy beasts who will inflict unspeakable horrors. Propaganda posters showed them as leering monsters. The officers' lectures were even more graphic. Torture, dishonor, a fate worse than any death. Death, they were told, was an honor, a duty. Each nurse carries 2 items of last resort. The first is a scalpel for her own throat. The second is a cyanide grenade. Shatter like a jewel, Gyokusai, before you allow yourself to be defiled. Akiko has practiced the motion in her mind 1,000 times. She has prepared for starvation, for pain, for the ultimate sacrifice. She has prepared for everything except for what is actually coming. She has not prepared for mercy. The end comes with a whimper. American flamethrowers turn nearby caves into roaring furnaces. The artillery is a constant, earth-shattering concussion. The command structure collapses. A wounded officer gives the girls their final order. From this point on, you are on your own. It is a death sentence. In the chaos, girls run into the storm of bullets. Some detonate their grenades. Akiko and a small group huddle deeper in the cave. Then, a new sound. The crunch of boots on gravel. A blinding beam of light cuts through the darkness, followed by voices, loud and utterly alien. This is it. The Oni have arrived. A massive silhouette fills the cave entrance. Akiko squeezes her eyes shut. Her hand trembles as it reaches for the grenade in her belt. Her mind is a whirlwind. Shatter like a jewel. But her body is frozen. A rough hand grabs her arm. She is dragged out of the darkness and into the blinding light of day. She expects a bayonet. A blow. Worse. Instead, she is shoved into a line with other survivors. She keeps her eyes fixed on the mud at her feet, waiting. But the minutes stretch on. No one is executed. No one is tortured. They are marched, stumbling and weak, to a collection point. The first crack in her reality is the water. An American GI, a boy who looks no older than she is, offers her a canteen. She flinches. He just shrugs, unscrews the cap, and gestures for her to drink. The water is clean. Cool. It tastes of nothing, and in that nothingness, it is the most glorious thing she has ever consumed. A small gesture that does not fit the narrative. It is only the beginning. They are taken to a processing camp. Here, the true disorientation begins. They are lined up and ordered to strip. Akiko's heart seizes with terror. This is the dishonor she was warned about. But the American soldiers turn their backs. It is female medics who oversee them. They are sprayed with a harsh-smelling, delousing powder. It is humiliating, but efficient. Clinical. There is no cruelty in it. And then they are led to a tent. Inside, pipes run along the ceiling, dotted with shower heads. A soldier hands each of them a small, rectangular object. Akiko stares at it. It is pale, almost white. She has not seen one in so long, she barely recognizes it. It is a bar of soap. A wave of hot water hits her. She gasps. The shock makes her whole body tremble. For 3 months, clean had meant wiping her face with a moldy rag. Now, hot, clean water is sluicing over her, washing away layers of dried blood, mud, and the grime of the cave. She lifts the soap. It has a simple, chemical smell. She lathers it in her hands, watching the suds turn from white to a sickening brown. She scrubs her skin until it is raw, tears mixing with the water on her face. These are not tears of fear. They are tears of utter, soul-shaking confusion. Demons do not give you hot showers. Monsters do not give you soap. After the shower, the next shock. They are handed clean American military-issue fatigues. The cotton is stiff, but it is whole, it is dry, it does not smell of death. As Akiko buttons the shirt, the feeling of clean fabric against her clean skin is so overwhelming, she feels dizzy. It is a forgotten dignity. This was the true weapon of the Americans. It was this casual, almost thoughtless application of basic human decency. It attacked the very foundation of Akiko's worldview. Her own government had left her to die in a filthy cave. The enemy, the Oni, gave her soap and a clean shirt. The paradox was a physical weight, pressing down on her. Was it all a trick? A more sophisticated form of torture designed to break their spirit? Or was it possible that everything she knew was a lie? The days that followed were a parade of shocks. Each one was a small chisel, chipping away at the fortress of her beliefs. The first assault was the food. In the cave, a meal was a cold, palm-sized rice ball, if she was lucky. Here, they were given small tins, sea rations. Akiko would stare at the unfamiliar labels, suspicious, but hunger always won. She pried one open to find a stew of meat and vegetables. Another held canned peaches. The sweetness was explosive on her tongue. It was a flavor she had not experienced in years, a ghost from a peaceful childhood. One afternoon, a guard offered her something on a cracker, a thick brown paste. She watched him eat one first, then hesitantly took it. It was peanut butter. The salty, fatty, sticky texture was bizarre. It was the food of another world. A Red Cross report from 1943 noted that Allied prisoners in Japanese camps received less than 600 calories a day. Akiko was now eating more in one meal than she had in 3 days in the cave. Then there were the sounds. In the evenings, the guards would listen to a small radio. From it spilled the alien sounds of Glenn Miller's orchestra. It was not the mournful, patriotic music of Japan. It was music for dancing, for celebration, for joy. How could these demons have such music? She would watch them play baseball, a game she vaguely knew. They would shout and laugh and argue over a call. They were not a monolithic horde of monsters. They were boys. Boys who missed their homes, just as she did. The ultimate symbol of this bizarre new reality arrived on a brutally hot afternoon. A medic, seeing her looking faint, walked over and handed her a green, fluted glass bottle. Condensation beaded on its side. Coca-Cola. She had heard of it, a decadent American drink. She took a hesitant sip. The cold, sugary fizz was an electric shock to her system. It was pure, wasteful luxury. A symbol of a civilization so wealthy, so powerful, that it could afford to put sugar and bubbles in a bottle and ship it thousands of miles to a war zone for its soldiers. Japan was melting down temple bells for scrap metal. America had Coca-Cola. In that single moment she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that the war was lost. Not on the battlefield, but in the factories, in the culture, in the sheer, crushing weight of this abundance. If the truth of this story surprises you, and you believe these hidden histories deserve to be seen, subscribe to our channel. It is the single best way to ensure they are not forgotten. This war was no longer happening outside the barbed wire fence. It was raging inside her. A Himeyuri survivor later wrote in a secret diary, pieced together from scraps of paper, "The enemy I was taught to hate is not here. There are only people." For Akiko, every act of kindness was a betrayal of her emperor. Every clean meal was an insult to her fallen friends. Every night she slept without the fear of an explosion was a betrayal of her duty to die. Was it all a trick? A more sophisticated form of torture, designed to break their spirit before the final, terrible dishonor? Or was it possible that everything she knew, everything she had been willing to die for, was a lie? The honor of shattering like a jewel seemed so simple in the darkness of the cave. Here, in the relentless light of day, it was a complex and horrifying madness. The true cruelty she was beginning to understand was not a bayonet in the hands of an American. The true cruelty was a grenade in the hands of a 19-year-old girl, placed there by her own leaders. The mercy was not from her homeland, which had demanded her death. The mercy came from the foreign demons, who had given her soap. In the quiet of the camp, Akiko faced the most terrifying paradox of all. Her captivity was more dignified than the freedom she had been fighting for. The psychological siege began not with an interrogation, but with a movie. One evening, the guards erected a white sheet between two poles. A projector whirred to life, spitting a cone of flickering light into the Okinawan dusk. Akiko and the other prisoners were ordered to sit and watch. They expected propaganda. Gleaming American cities. Happy families. Another form of Coca-Cola, designed to awe and intimidate. The first images were not of America, they were of Europe. Skeletal figures in striped pajamas stared out from behind barbed wire, piles of shoes, mountains of eyeglasses. A narrator with a solemn voice explained these were German camps. Buchenwald, Dachau. This, he said, is what Japan's allies had done. Akiko felt a wave of nausea. She'd been told the war was a holy crusade to liberate Asia from Western corruption. She had never been told about this. Then the film shifted. It showed factories. An endless river of steel being shaped into tanks. A sky black, with bombers rolling off an assembly line. The narrator's voice was flat, devoid of emotion, reciting numbers. In 1944, America produced over 96,000 airplanes. Japan produced 28,000. For every cargo ship their fathers and brothers built, the Americans launched 10. It was not a boast. It was simple, brutal arithmetic. The war was not a battle of spirit. It was a problem of mathematics, and Japan had already been solved. The films became a nightly ritual, each one a precise, surgical cut into the body of their faith. The reality they showed was more devastating than any weapon. It did not kill the body, it assassinated the soul. The camp divided. Some prisoners clung to their beliefs with the ferocity of the dying. They called the films clever forgeries. They whispered that the Americans were fattening them up for medical experiments. One morning, a girl who had been Akiko's classmate was found in the latrine. She had used a sharpened spoon handle to open her wrists. She had not died from fear of the enemy. She had died from the terror of her own doubt. The American medics saved her. They seemed angry, not at her, but at the waste of it all. This, too, was a confusing mercy. Akiko felt herself drifting in a gray ocean between two shores. One was the land of honor, duty, and the divine emperor. It was a land she now knew was built on a foundation of lies. The other shore was survival. It was a world of peanut butter and clean clothes, but it felt like a profound betrayal. To choose survival was to admit her friends had died for nothing. To choose honor was to die for a lie. The final blow came not from a film, but from a man. He was a Nisei, a Japanese-American soldier. He gathered the prisoners for what they called lectures. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He spoke to them in perfect, polite Japanese, which was the most unsettling thing of all. He laid out maps. He showed them the ring of steel closing around their homeland. One day, he brought a small wooden box. It was full of letters, taken from the bodies of Japanese soldiers. He began to read them aloud. They were not poems about glorious death. They were not final, stoic goodbyes. They were letters of despair, a soldier writing to his wife about the maggots in his rice. A boy of 17 begging his mother for a single sweet bean cake, a taste of home. An officer admitting to his brother that their unit had been abandoned, left to starve with no orders and no hope. He read one from a soldier on an island not far from Okinawa. I have not seen a supply ship in 6 months. We have eaten the last of the roots. The commanders tell us to fight to the last man, but they eat canned fish from a secret stash. Honor is a word for men with full stomachs. Akiko stared at the Nisei's face. He was the enemy. He wore their uniform. But he spoke with the voices of her own people, the voices of the betrayed. She remembered the officer in the cave, his final, dismissive order. You are on your own. It was not an order for a noble sacrifice. It was the act of a man discarding a broken tool. The grenade in her belt had not been a key to an honorable death. It was just a simple, cheap way for the Imperial Army to clean up its own mess. The truth was a quiet, suffocating poison. It did not explode, it seeped. The true enemy had never been the blue-eyed demons. The true enemy was the men who had sent her into the cave, armed with lies and a cyanide grenade. The ultimate dishonor was not capture. It was the slow realization that her life, her devotion, her willingness to die had been meaningless. Then, one afternoon in August, the routine shattered. The guards, normally so relaxed, were tense. They gathered in small, anxious groups around the camp radio. The baseball game was forgotten. The swing music was silent. Akiko and the other nurses watched through the wire. The air itself felt different, brittle, tense with an unspoken question. A senior American officer, a man they rarely saw, strode into their barracks. He did not look at them with the usual mixture of pity and professional distance. He looked at them as if he were seeing them for the first time. His face was grim, unreadable. Through the Nisei interpreter, he gave a simple command: everyone outside, to the center of the compound, now. No one moved. The words hung in the humid air. Was this it? The final deception? The mass execution they had been warned of? The dishonor they had been saved from, only to have it delivered now that their spirits were broken? Slowly, silently, Akiko and the others rose to their feet. They walked out of the barracks and into the blinding sun, toward the center of the yard, where the entire camp was being assembled to face a future that had suddenly, terrifyingly, become unknown once more. The Nisei interpreter's face was a mask. He waited for the American officer to finish speaking, then took a breath. The silence in the compound was absolute, broken only by the chirping of cicadas. Akiko braced herself. This was the end. But the words that came were not about execution. They were not about punishment. The interpreter's voice was flat, as if he were reading a weather report. The emperor has spoken to the people. The war is over. Japan has surrendered. The words did not land like a bomb. They landed like ash. There was no crying, no celebration. Just a vast, hollow stillness. The world they had been fighting for, the divine mission they were willing to die for, had just evaporated in a single sentence. For Akiko, the feeling was not shame. It was not even defeat. It was a profound, bottomless relief, so total it felt like its own kind of death. The journey home was a silent one. They were repatriated on American ships, vessels of the enemy navy, that now served as ferries to a life they never expected to live. They arrived not in the glorious divine homeland of the propaganda posters, but in a nation of ghosts. Cities of rubble, a people stunned and starving. The crushing irony was not lost on Akiko. She had left a prisoner of war camp where she had hot showers and food in cans, to return to a free homeland where people were boiling roots to survive. In the years that followed, silence became a shield. For many in Japan, the Himeyuri survivors were not heroes. They were a quiet embarrassment. They were the ones who had not shattered like jewels. They had lived. In a culture that had made a deity of death, survival was a complicated, often shameful thing. So Akiko, like most of the others, did not speak of the caves. She did not speak of the grenades. And she certainly did not speak of the kindness of the demons. She folded the memories away, like an old stained uniform, and tucked them into the deepest drawer of her mind. She married. She raised children in the new Japan, a country that rose from the ashes with a frantic energy. She watched as American culture, once the symbol of the enemy, flooded her nation. Baseball, jazz, and Coca-Cola, she saw it everywhere. But sometimes, in the quiet moments of a long life, the memories would surface. She would be washing her hands, the scent of a simple bar of soap filling the air, and she would be 19 again, standing in a shower tent in Okinawa, tears and hot water streaming down her face. She would remember the profound shock, not of a bomb, but of a clean shirt. The final, terrible paradox of her war was not that her country had lost. It was that she had been saved. The greatest cruelty she had ever known was not the American soldier who dragged her from the cave. It was the Japanese officer who had ordered her to die in it. The most profound act of mercy she ever received did not come from her emperor, for whom she would have gladly died. It came from the enemy, who taught her that the will to live was not a weakness, and that the greatest weapon in any war is the one that chooses not to strike. Her life was not a prize she had won, but a gift from the demon she was meant to kill. The stories of the Himeyuri survivors were buried for decades, a testament to the complex legacy of war. If you believe these hidden histories must be brought into the light, like this video and subscribe to our channel. And let us know in the comments, what was the most shocking detail in this story for you?